This is the story of Pinocchio.
Little Pinocchio, just made of wood.
There was an old man who had a little shop. All day long he'd chop, chop, chop. He made lots of toys and puppets out of wood, and so many things that were oh so good. The little old man, he lived all alone. He had no son he could call his own. Decided one day when work was done that from a piece of wood he would carve a son. So he grabbed a piece of wood and went chop, chop, chop. When all of a sudden a voice cried,
Stop! Stop! Ouch! You're hurting me!
the little old man couldn't believe his ears. He was never so happy in all his years. His dream is coming true, and if it's so, call the little wooden boy Pinocchio.
So the little old man, whose name was Geppetto, kept on carving and chopping. And every time he chopped, he thought he heard a voice cry out.
Ouch! Ouch! That hurts! Now you're tickling me!
Geppetto grew very excited and worked faster and faster. First he made a wooden head, then the eyes, then a long nose, and then came the mouth. No sooner than he had finished the mouth, the little wooden face cried out again.
You're hurting me, you funny old man! Stop it! Stop cutting me up!
Don't worry, Pinocchio. I won't hurt you. You're going to be my son, and I will be your father. I, Geppetto, will take very good care of you. Geppetto started in to carve again. First Pinocchio's left arm, then his right, then Pinocchio's left leg, and finally his right leg. As soon as Pinocchio felt his two legs, he jumped out of Geppetto's hands, ran around the room and out the open door into the street. Come back, Pinocchio! Come back, Pinocchio! You naughty little boy! But Pinocchio paid no attention and kept running down the street singing,
I'm a funny little boy that's made of wood. I'm carved from a limb of the hickory tree. I have a wooden head and a long, long nose. Everybody laughs when they look at me.
He's made of wood from a hickory tree. He's got the longest nose that you ever did see. Pinocchio, Pinocchio, that's his name. He has no sense and he has no shame.
Catch me if you can. I can run faster than anyone can.
Poor old Geppetto ran after Pinocchio as fast as his old legs could carry him, but Pinocchio was too quick for him. At last Geppetto got tired of running and turned back to his house. He said to himself, oh well, Pinocchio will be back in a little while because he has no place to sleep. Hours passed, but still Pinocchio had not returned, and at last Geppetto fell fast asleep.
Poor old Geppetto fell fast asleep.
The next morning, Geppetto and all the friendly people of the village set out to find Pinocchio, calling out,
Pinocchio, we'll find you if we have to go to Tokyo. Come out, wherever you are. Pinocchio.
After hours of walking and searching, Geppetto came to the shore of a great big ocean, and there at last he spied Pinocchio.
Catch me if you can. I can swim faster than anyone can.
Pinocchio dived into the water and started to swim out to sea as fast as he could. Geppetto jumped into a rowboat and set out to catch his little wooden son. He was rowing his boat when suddenly a huge spray of water shot up right in front of him. Shh! And there, before his very eyes, was a great big whale. Geppetto became very frightened and cried out, Pinocchio! Pinocchio, help me! Then, with one big gulp, the whale swallowed Geppetto, boat and all.
Silly old man! I knew he couldn't catch me.
So Pinocchio swam back to shore and stood on the beach laughing. Suddenly, a good fairy appeared.
You're a naughty little boy, and you ought to be ashamed. Geppetto is in trouble, and you're the one to blame.
I am a bad boy, but I'll be good from now on. You'll see.
Once more, Pinocchio dived into the water and swam to the spot where the whale was sleeping.
Mr. Whale! Mr. Whale! Wake up! Wake up!
The whale rolled around and looked at Pinocchio.
What do you want, little wooden boy?
Mr. Whale, please eat me up.
I'm not hungry. I just had my supper. Besides, I'm sleepy. Go away.
And so when the whale opened his mouth to yawn, Pinocchio swam into his mouth and down into his belly.
I've come to save you, Father. I'll get you out.
Pinocchio picked up the driftwood from Geppetto's boat and then lit a match to it. "What are you doing?" cried Geppetto.
I'm building a great big fire. Now watch what happens.
And soon the smoke from Pinocchio's fire made the whale sneeze and snort. Then with one final great big sneeze, he opened his mouth and blew Pinocchio and Geppetto high into the sky. Over the water they sailed and landed safely on the beach. There stood the good fairy.
You really are a good boy, Pinocchio, and you shall be rewarded.
And then, with one stroke of her magic wand, Pinocchio turned into a real live boy.
Oh, look at me, oh, look at me. I'm a real live boy. Gee, I'm happy, gosh, oh, gee. I'm a real live boy.
He's a real life boy.
Many years ago, there was a dear little girl named Goldilocks. Although she loved her mother and father very much and obeyed them in almost every other thing, little Goldilocks kept wandering away from home. Her mother had said,
Goldilocks, you must stay in the yard. Good little girls don't wander away from home.
her father had taken her on his knee and warned her time and time again of the big bad animals that might chase her and frighten her to tears. But one day Goldilocks wandered off into the woods. She suddenly found that she had lost her way. Then up ahead of her she saw a tiny wee house. And she said to herself,
Maybe some kind people live there, and they'll show me the way to go home.
so she went up and knocked on the door. She knocked and knocked again and again. But nobody came to the door. After a little while she began to get very, very hungry. So she tiptoed into the house and went into the dining room. And there, what do you think she found?
Oh, look! 3 bowls of porridge. A big bowl, a middle-sized bowl, and a dear little teeny-weeny bowl.
She took a taste of the porridge in the big bowl.
Oh, that's too hot.
Then she took a taste of the middle-sized bowl of porridge.
Oh, that's too cold.
So she tasted the porridge in the little teeny-weeny bowl.
This is just right.
And so she ate it all up. She was so sleepy, she went into the bedroom, and there she found 3 beds. 1 big bed, 1 middle-sized bed, and 1 dear little teeny-weeny bed. So Goldilocks climbed into the teeny-weeny bed and was soon fast asleep. But while she was sleeping, the people who lived in the little house came home. And what do you think? They were 3 bears. Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and little Baby Bear. And were they surprised to find someone had been eating their porridge? And the 3 bears said,
Someone has been eating my porridge.
Someone has been eating my porridge, too. Oh, someone's been eating my porridge and ate it all up.
So the 3 bears started looking around the house. Finally, they got to the bedroom, and they said,
Someone has been sleeping in my bed.
Someone has been sleeping in my bed, too. Oh, somebody's been sleeping in my bed, and here she is.
Their voices awakened Goldilocks. She jumped up out of bed and ran out of the house. And even though she had been a naughty girl to wander away from home, a good little angel was watching over her and guided her home out of the woods. When she arrived, she climbed into her mother's arms and said,
Oh, Mother, I'll never wander out of our yard again.
And that is the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears.
Up so high, Geppetto
was a poor little boy named Jack, whose poor old mother wasn't feeling very well. They had nothing left but a poor old cow, which they finally decided to sell.
Well, Jack didn't act very smart, it seems, for he traded the cow for a handful of beans.
When Jack got home, his mother was angry, so she threw the beans out the window. And Jack and his mother went to bed hungry. In the morning, Jack looked outside, and there was a huge beanstalk which had grown up overnight. Jack was very curious, so he started to climb.
Up, up, up so high. Jack climbed the beanstalk way up to the sky. Up, up, up.
When he got to the top, Jack found a giant's castle, and he heard a loud, rumbling voice.
Wife, bring me my magic hen that lays golden eggs.
After the hen had laid a few golden eggs, the giant dozed off to sleep. So Jack grabbed the hen and ran back to the beanstalk.
Down, down, down to the ground. Jack came down the beanstalk and home safe and sound.
Jack gave the hen to his mother and told her about the golden eggs. Now they didn't have to go hungry. But Jack was still curious about the giant. So again he started to climb.
Up, up, up so high. Jack climbed the beanstalk way up to the sky. Up, up, up.
Jack was hiding in the castle when he heard the giant shout.
Wife, bring me my magic harp.
The harp played beautiful music all by itself, and soon the giant was asleep. Jack grabbed the harp and started to run. But the harp played so loud, the giant woke up and started to chase Jack as he ran back to the beanstalk.
Down, down, down to the ground. Jack came down the beanstalk and home safe and sound.
Jack ran and got his axe. Then he chopped down the beanstalk just as the giant was climbing down after him. There was an awful crash.
Oh, I'm falling! Oh!
The giant made such a big hole in the ground, he hasn't been heard from since.
So that's what happened to Jack and his handful of beans. Henry Penny had a friend whose name was Turkey Lurkey. Turkey Lurkey had a friend whose name was Goosey Lucy. Goosey Lucy had a friend whose name was Chicken Licken. All day long down on the farm for food they'd go a pickin'. Pick went Henry Penny pickin' on some bread. Suddenly an acorn fell and hit her on the head.
Goodness gracious me! The sky is falling down. I must run and tell the king.
On the way to tell the king, she met her turkey friend.
Turkey Lurkey, follow me. The world's about to end. The sky is falling down. The sky is falling down. We must go and tell the king the sky is falling down.
So off went Henny Penny and Turkey Lurkey as fast as they could to tell the king that the sky was falling down. Soon they met Goosey Lucy swimming in the lake.
Goosey Lucy, come with us. Run for goodness sake.
The sky is falling down. The sky is falling down. We must go and tell the king the sky is falling down.
So off went Henny Penny, Turkey Lurkey, and Goosey Lucy as fast as they could to tell the king that the sky was falling down. Chicken Licken heard the news and cried, "What shall we do?"
We must go and tell the king. He'll know just what to do. The sky is falling down. The sky is falling down. We must go and tell the king the sky is falling down.
So off went Henny Penny, Turkey Lurkey, Goosey Lucy, and Chicken Licken as fast as they could to tell the king that the sky was falling down. By and by they met a sly old fox. Foxy Loxy was his name.
Where are you going, Henny Penny, Turkey Lurkey, Goosey Lucy, Chicken Licken?
Oh, Foxy Loxy, follow us. We're off to tell the king the sky is falling down.
Oh, but that That isn't the way to the king. I know the right way. Follow me.
The sly old fox didn't lead them to the king, but instead he led them right into his cave. And as soon as they entered the cave, Foxy Loxy locked the door.
I'll just lock you up tight in there and come back later when I'm good and hungry.
Oh, me, oh, my. What shall we do? What shall we do?
But Henny Penny knew just what to do. She dug a great big hole in the corner of the cave, and then Henny Penny, Turkey Lurkey, Goosey Loosey, and Chicken Licken crawled out and headed straight for home singing,
The fox will be surprised. The fox will be surprised.
When he comes home to eat his meal and finds that we're not there, he'll be so mad he'll grunt and growl and tear out all his hair.
The fox will be surprised.
And so Henny Penny, Turkey Lurkey, Goosey Loosey, and Chicken Licken never did get to tell the king that the sky was falling down.
Gingerbread, gingerbread, gingerbread man. Have you heard the story of the gingerbread man? Gingerbread, gingerbread, gingerbread man. Well, this is the story of the gingerbread man.
There was an old woman as lonely as could be. She had no children of her own, you see. So one day she made a little boy of gingerbread, with chocolate for his clothes and a sugar-coated head. She put him in the oven and closed the door and thought, now I shall have a little boy of my own. But when it was time for the gingerbread boy to be done, the old woman opened the oven door, and the gingerbread boy jumped out, and away he ran.
Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man.
Run, run, fast as you can. You can't catch him, he's the gingerbread man.
The little old woman called to her little old husband, and he ran after the gingerbread boy.
Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man.
Run, run, fast as you can. You can't catch him, he's the gingerbread man.
He came to a cow, and the cow asked him to stop.
I've run away from a little old woman. I've run away from a little old man. And I can run away from you, I can. So run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man.
Run, run, fast as you can. You can't catch him, he's the gingerbread man.
He came to a horse, and the horse asked him to stop.
I've run away from a little old woman, a little old man, and a cow. And I can run away from you, I can. Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man.
Run, run, fast as you can. You can't catch him, he's the gingerbread man.
He came to a dog, and the dog asked him to stop.
I've run away from a little old woman. I've run away from a little old man, and a cow, and a horse. And I can run away from you, I can. So run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man.
Run, run, fast as you can. You can't catch him, he's the gingerbread man.
He came to a cat, and the cat asked him to stop.
I've run away from a little old woman, a little old man, and a cow, and a horse, and a dog. And I can run away from you, I can. Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man.
Run, run, fast as you can. You can't catch him, he's the gingerbread man. Run, run, fast as you can. You can't catch him, he's the gingerbread man. Run, run, fast as you can. You can't catch him, he's the gingerbread man.
The gingerbread man is still running away.
Run, 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 little gingerbread man. Snow White, beautiful, beautiful Snow White, loved by all, always called beautiful Snow White, loveliest princess of all.
In a faraway land long, long ago, there lived a little princess called Snow White. She had long, dark hair and skin as white as snow. Every morning, all the little birds would gather at Snow White's window and sing this little song. Oh, there's nothing like a song to start the day, right? Pucker up your lips and whistle at the sunlight.
Hum a happy song. Oh hum, nothing can go wrong.
Oh, there's nothing like a song to start the day, right? Snow White was very happy and loved everyone, but she didn't know that her stepmother, the Queen, who was also very beautiful, was jealous of her. Each night the Queen would sit in front of her magic mirror and ask,
Oh, mirror, mirror on the wall, am I most beautiful of all?
Oh, lovely Queen, thou art so fair, in all the land none can compare. This would make the Queen very happy, for she knew the magic mirror would speak only the truth. Many years passed, and Snow White grew more and more beautiful. Then one day the Queen spoke again to the magic mirror.
Oh, mirror, mirror on the wall, am I most beautiful of all?
Oh, lovely Queen, though you are fair, with Snow White you can't compare. The Queen went into a jealous rage and ordered a hunter to take Snow White into the forest and leave her there. So the very next morning, the hunter took Snow White far into the woods and left her there.
Poor Snow White, lost in the wood. Poor Snow White, so misunderstood. What will she eat and where will she sleep? Poor Snow White, lost in the wood.
Snow White wandered through the forest until she was so tired and hungry she couldn't go any farther. Just then she saw a pretty little cottage. She knocked on the door. And when no one answered, she went in. She sat down in a chair by the fire, and it wasn't long before she fell fast asleep.
Out of the woods came 7 little men. One at a time they knocked at the door. Open the door, open the door.
When Snow White opened the door, she was frightened. There before her were 7 little dwarfs, all standing in a row.
We're 7 little dwarfs, no bigger than your thumb. Diddly-dee, diddly-die, diddly-dum-dum. We're 7 little dwarfs, we're 7 just like one. Diddly-dee, diddly-die, diddly-dum-dum. Our names are Dumpy, Flap, and Plan, Slap and Happy, Whiz and Wham. We're 7 little dwarfs, no bigger than your thumb. Diddly-dee, diddly-die, diddly-dum-dum. Diddly-dee, diddly-die, diddly-dum.
Into the cottage came the 7 dwarfs. They were very angry. But upon seeing the beautiful young Princess Snow White, they all fell in love with her. And they decided to let her stay with them as long as she wished. Snow White and the 7 dwarfs lived very happily together in the little white cottage. One day the Queen sat in front of her magic mirror and asked,
Oh, mirror, mirror, tell me tonight, whatever happened to Snow White?
Snow White lives in the forest glen, in a pretty little cottage with 7 little men. When the Queen found where Snow White was living, she dressed up like an old woman and went to Snow White's door and gave her a poisoned apple. No sooner than Snow White had taken the first bite of the apple, a terrible thing happened. She fell to the floor in a deep, deep sleep, with part of the apple still in her mouth. That evening, when the 7 little dwarfs came home and found Snow White lying on the floor, they thought she was dead. And they decided to dress her in a shimmering golden dress and put her into a pure glass case. The next day, a handsome prince who was riding, and when he saw the lovely Snow White, he couldn't believe his eyes. He lifted the lid of the glass case, and in so doing, knocked the poisoned apple from her lips, and Snow White came to life. Upon seeing Snow White alive, the prince asked her to be his bride, And so Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs went with the prince to the great palace, where they lived happily ever after.
Snow White, loveliest princess of all.
In a faraway land, there once lived a little girl called Little Red Riding Hood. Now, I bet you want to know why she was called by such a funny name, don't you? Well, she loved to run through the woods to visit her grandmother who lived in the next village. So the little girl's mother made her a bright red hood to wear so her father could see her a long ways off and could go and meet her. One day, her mother fixed up a nice basket of good things to eat.
Little one, here are some goodies for your grandmother. I wish you'd take them to her. But mind you, dear, don't stop and talk with anyone on the way.
Going through the woods, Little Red Riding Hood heard a rough, gruff voice.
Where are you going, Little Red Riding Hood?
I'm going to see my dear grandmother who lives in the little white house in the next village through the woods.
Little Red Riding Hood wasn't afraid of the wolf because she liked animals and was always friendly with them. But the wolf, oh, he was a bad one. He ran as fast as the wind and got to her grandmother's house ahead of the little girl.
Who's there?
It's your grandchild, Little Red Riding Hood, and I brought you some nice things to eat.
Well, pull the bobbin, child, and the latch will fly up.
So the wolf pulled the bobbin and the door opened. When she saw the wolf, Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother ran quickly away. Because he was very hungry and hadn't eaten for 3 days, the wolf decided to wait for Little Red Riding Hood so he could gobble her up. So he put on Grandma's clothes and nightcap and got into bed. Soon Little Red Riding Hood arrived and knocked at the door.
Who's there?
It's your grandchild, Little Red Riding Hood.
Well, pull the bobbin, child, and the latch will fly up.
Little Red Riding Hood opened the door and went in. She put the basket on the table and went over to sit on the side of the bed to be near her grandmother. But oh, she was frightened to see how her grandmother looked.
Grandmother, what big ears you have.
The better to hear you, my child.
Grandmother, what big eyes you have.
The better to see you, my child.
Grandmother, what big teeth you have.
The better to eat you up, my child.
But Little Red Riding Hood jumped up and ran quickly out of the house through the woods to her home. Because she had on her red hood, her father saw her from a long ways off and came running to meet her. And from that time on, Little Red Riding Hood never stopped to talk with strangers.
Once there was a little red hen with 5 little chicks to feed. Pluck the little red hen who'll help me find some seed. Not I,
Quack the duck.
not I,
Squeak the mouse.
and the pussycat.
Meow, not I.
Not I,
Bark the dog.
not I,
Move the cow.
and the piggly wiggly oink.
Not I.
My chicks are so hungry. I must find some food for them to eat.
So the little red hen went looking for food and found a grain of wheat. Pluck the little red hen who'll help me plant this wheat. Not I,
Quack the duck.
not I,
Squeak the mouse.
and the pussycat.
Meow, not I.
Not I,
Bark the dog.
not I,
Move the cow.
and the piggly wiggly oink.
Not I.
If no one will help me plant this wheat, then I'll do it all by myself. I'll dig a hole and plant the wheat and watch it grow up tall. Then I'll cut and thresh and grind the wheat without any help at all.
Then the little red hen, she took the flour and baked a loaf of bread. Pluck the little red hen who'll help me eat this bread. I will.
Quack the duck.
I will.
Squeak the mouse.
And the pussycat.
Wow, I will.
I will.
Bark the dog.
I will.
Move the cow.
And the piggly wiggly oink.
Me too.
But the little red hen just shook her head, and this is what she said.
You wouldn't help me bake this bread, so I'll feed my chicks instead.
Oh, please, Mrs. Hen, oh, please, Mrs. Hen, can we have a piece of bread?
No, no, my friends, no, no, my friends, I'll feed my chicks instead.
So the little red hen, she took the